Hi, I'm Zack Viscomi, and this is my story. Life started for me like it does for most people, right? It probably ends the same way as well, but I was born to a lower middle class family in a hospital. I was jaundiced, so I didn't get to come home right away. I was actually in an incubator, and so spent a week or so, or whatever it was there. My great-grandparents came over from Italy. They started a Viscomi's Quality Meats and Deli, and they opened up an ice cream shop as well. And so it was great. I mean, like the life of any kid, you know, I didn't have any worries in the world. I was looking for ways to have fun and to get into trouble, and I did that a lot. We lived in a small industrial town. It used to be like a transportation hub in Warren County, New Jersey, a small town called Phillipsburg. My dad worked. My mom decided, they both decided that it would be best for them if my mom stayed home. And so we were a low-income family, but we made it work. And they did their best to make it work as well. I look back with hindsight and see that there was these different events in my life that really kind of made me who I was as I got older. And when I was 3, I remember keen memory that I have is of our house burning down. It was the middle of the night. My dad ripped me out of bed. I was dead asleep, threw me over his shoulder. I remember thinking of how hot it was, but not really knowing what was going on and being very disoriented through the whole thing. But coming outside, everything was bright and still not fully understanding it. And he put me in the back seat of a car a little bit further down the block with my younger sister who was 2 at the time. My dad had gone back to knock on neighbors' doors. My mom was, she ran back into the house, she says, to make a phone call, but the windows blew out. So she figured it was a good idea to not stay in there. But I remember sitting in that moment, somebody just said to us, you know, don't turn around and look. And of course, you know, as a 3-year-old, I was like, I should probably get up and turn around and look, and I did. And I didn't really know what the scene was, right? I didn't know what I was taking in. But that was the start of many different stories like that. We were in Easton, Pennsylvania at that time, and then we moved back into Phillipsburg, New Jersey, where I met a really good friend of mine who I spent most of my formative years growing up with. And we did all sorts of things to get into trouble in this small, dying industrial town. My great-grandparents, and I found this out, I kind of put some pieces together here and there. My dad's side, both of my grandparents came over from Italy. On my mom's side, my grandfather's parents came over from Italy, and my grandmother has a long history of Germans who lived here in the United States for some time. I haven't been able to trace it all the way back, but my great-grandparents started a company, Viscomi's Quality Meats, and an ice cream shop a little bit later on. And there was this entrepreneurial spirit that was passed down and something that I really share in. And I think a lot of that energy and that spirit had really rubbed off on me, and I didn't even realize it. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She did the best that she could, and my dad, you know, working really hard, trying to make ends meet. We were on government assistance for a while. It was, it probably put a lot of stress on my parents, and, you know, they were just trying to figure it out and doing the best they could too, but figuring out how to work together and be in a relationship together wasn't really in the cards, and so they ended up divorcing when I was 8. Another moment where I was ripped out of bed in the middle of the night, although this time it was by my mom. She came upstairs and just, you know, told my sister and I to grab some stuff, and we were leaving. And the next thing I know, I'm sleeping on somebody's couch. And I remember in that moment, and this will kind of play into the rest of my story and what's really shaped me, but I remember in that moment being sad, crying on the couch and just not knowing what's going on, and then telling myself, you know, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna let really anything affect me. And that was really, I think, for me, the start of how I would live the rest of my life. And I'm sure there was a lot of things beforehand that contributed to it, but that's definitely a memory that I have of what set me on the path that I went on from there. I took the divorce rough, not really understanding and not knowing what was going on. It was difficult. I didn't adjust well. My mom, I lived with her and my sister. We lived in the projects in New Jersey for a little bit. We moved around a lot. We went down to Virginia, lived in a cockroach-infested apartment, and you know, as always, and really, I would say, starting then, I started to notice myself really caring what other people thought about me. When I first started going to school there, I dreaded it. I dreaded going to a new school. I dreaded making new friends. I wasn't comfortable in myself. There was just a lot going on. And I remember this one guy, his name was Christian, oddly enough, and he was the first person to really befriend me at the school. And it became apparent very quickly that he wasn't one of the popular kids. And when the time came, when the popular kids were basically going to let me into their group, I remember this moment on the school ground of making fun of him. I was standing by while they were making fun of him and didn't stand up for him. And it's situations like that where I realized looking back over my life that I really didn't stand up for my principles. I didn't stand up for my values. I wasn't aligned with the things that really mattered to me. And in that moment, I had a deeper desire to be accepted than I did to stay true to who I was. The early part of my life, all the way up into my 20s, was really marked with a lot of reactivity. I didn't really care what was going on around me. It didn't matter. I made silly decisions. I remember getting mixed in with the wrong crowd, that same crowd of, popular kids down in Virginia. We would skip school. We would go into stores and steal candy, and some of my entrepreneurial spirit would come out there because I would walk up to the 7-Eleven before school and I would grab a bunch of stuff, whatever I could get my hands on, throw it into my backpack, and then I would take it to school and sell it. I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I frankly didn't care. Coming up through into high school, my mom had remarried to my stepdad. He was an addict and verbally abusive, and so that was just a very tumultuous home life, and I couldn't get out of there soon enough. I ended up moving in with a friend when I was 17 or so and lived with them for a little while, but I did whatever I could to just kind of be out of the house, and I couldn't leave Phillipsburg, New Jersey fast enough. And one of the ways in which I could do that was to go to school, small little university called Pfeiffer. And so I went down there with the hopes of playing soccer. I played soccer my whole life, loved playing soccer, really enjoyed it. So thought I was gonna play down there, was gonna walk onto the team and it was gonna be great. And then realized very quickly that I had to get up for practice at like 5 o'clock in the morning. And that was not something I was interested in. I wasn't that good, wasn't gonna be a professional, so getting up early wasn't a cool thing. So I decided not to. I decided to drink and party and have a good time instead. And I had always wanted to join the military. And so when I went home on fall break in October, I talked to a recruiter and I decided to sign up for the Marine Corps. And in 2005, I went to boot camp and stood on those iconic yellow footprints. Now, my original plan to go to infantry and scout sniper and all that kind of stuff was shifted after talking with my recruiter. I got my ASVAB test and I scored really high on it. He's like, you could do whatever you wanted. You're in school right now. He's like, if you wanted to go active duty infantry, you could do that. He's like, but I think you should go be a reservist. I joined the Marine Corps. I was in the reserves and I was going to school at a defunct university now, DeVry University. I was getting my my business degree. That was, what I figured would be good enough. I'm in sales and marketing. That should apply somewhere. The pivotal moment in this was I was supposed to get deployed in 2007. A couple days before we were going to get activated, I went out with a bunch of my friends, drinking, partying, just having a good time. Most of my life up until that point was marked by drugs and alcohol and whatever I could get my hands on as I just tried to escape from my own story. I was ashamed of my story. I was ashamed of, kind of who I was. I wanted people to accept me, and so I would tell stories that I thought would help them accept me, and this was no different. And it all came crashing in this moment where I had to take a drug test. I failed it for THC. I was a really good Marine. I got top marks, I did really well. So I didn't get kicked out, I got knocked down, had to stay on active duty for a little bit. And I just realized, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? Where do I go? The Marine Corps was the one thing that I had going for me right now, and I'm about to destroy that. So I had to stand before the commander and kind of face the charges of what was going on. And they stripped me of rank and I wasn't going to be deployable. So they weren't going to let me go over to Iraq. I decided, you know what, it's probably a good opportunity for me to now go back to school. And I had met my wife when I knew I was going to get deployed. I just kind of cut ties with her. I didn't want to have any attachments. So it was just like, yep, see you later. Checked out, was ready to go. Now coming back, I'm kind of realizing man, she was actually a great girl. I wonder if she'll take me back. We ended up getting married not too long after that. It was about 8 or 9 months we got engaged, and then we got married a few short months after that because I was going to get deployed again, this time in 2009. I remember saying goodbye to my wife and just how difficult that really was, and walking towards the bus, and again, tears starting to come down my face. And I remember back in that moment that I was laying on the couch when my parents' relationship had ended and thinking the same thing. I don't have time for tears. I can't do that right now. I'm getting on a bus, I'm going to war. I don't have time for this. And so I did the same thing that I did again and checked out, right? I closed off, I put up the walls and got deployed. I was overseas. I ended up being a machine gunner for convoys out there. So when I joined the reserves, the unit out of Red Bank, New Jersey was 6th Motor Transport Battalion. When we got activated, we were the first and only entire reserve battalion to ever get activated and then deployed and serve in country. One of the things that really changed for me in that moment was all the guys that I had deployed with knew me before, right? So I went to church and was going to church with my wife, which led me to becoming a Christian. I would still out go drinking with the guys, but they noticed a change in me that maybe I didn't even notice in myself. And so there was a lot of times when we were over there where guys would come to me and ask me questions, or, you know, they would talk to me about some of the problems that they were having at home. And before all of our convoys, we would have a chaplain that would come out and pray for us. He would say the same prayer every time. And they were like, Viscomi, man, like, you got to pray for us, dude. This guy doesn't care. Like, you've got to be the one who prays for us because, you know, you know us, you care about us. And I realized in that moment, you know, I really do enjoy helping people, but I have no idea how to do that. My history, my path of self-destruction, my path of not accepting my own story, and my path of needing other people to accept me led me to a place where our relationship, my marriage, was not going to be okay. And this was somebody that I really cared about, probably for the first time in my life. If it wasn't for her, there's so much about me and this journey that I've been on that I wouldn't be on, and who knows where I would have ended up. I started uncovering the reality of, if I wanted to move forward, if I wanted to have a good relationship, if I wanted to have a successful life, I needed to take ownership of my story. I needed to look back on these things that I've been running from, my past traumas, my past hurt, the things that I was ignoring, the parts of me that I didn't like. After starting to share my story, starting to uncover those elements of my story and reintegrating them and becoming confident in who I was, and has now set me on a path where that's what I want to do for other people. I really do have a heart, it seems, for entrepreneurs and helping them to be able to uncover their story, their core story, the reason why they do what they do, and then sharing that with their audience in a way that's authentic. And then really even digging in a little bit further to, you know, what's your prospect story? What's your client story? And really all of this, everything that I do really hinges on what I call the story mindset. And it's this idea that we can be in control of our future story. We are the author of our story. And so really what I'm passionate about helping people do now, because of how much it's changed my life and the impact that it's had, is understanding how much your story is a part of who you are. And by sharing your story, it's a part of who we all are. I help people to understand their story, to embrace their story, to share their story, to grow their businesses, to have a greater impact in the lives of the people that are around them, but really truly to unlock their greatest potential so that they can continue to help other people.